This video is for educational overview only. Viewers are encouraged to study the topic in detail and continue their academic learning alongside this video. Thanks.
Actually going to look like in 2026? Well, today we're going to dive into the absolutely dramatic evolution of the entire React ecosystem. I mean, the way we build is changing so fundamentally, it's practically a whole new tool. And I'm serious, think again. If you learned React even just a few short years ago, you might be in for a bit of a shock. The patterns, the tools we use, and even the core philosophy behind it have all gone through a massive transformation. And that's really the key thing to get here. This is not about a couple of new hooks or some minor performance tweaks. We are talking about a fundamental shift from what was a UI library to a really comprehensive platform for building modern web applications. So to get our heads around this new world, we're going to walk through 6 key shifts. We'll start with the new paradigm. Then we'll see how automation is basically killing off manual work. We'll understand why everything seems to be moving server-side, explore the new meta frameworks that run the show, check out our new AI-powered toolkit, and then finally, we'll figure out what this all means for your role as a developer. Okay, first up, the new paradigm. At its core, this whole shift is about finally realizing that React has moved way, way beyond its beginnings as just a simple library for managing UIs. You know, React's journey has had these huge revolutionary moments. We started with the basic component model, which was amazing. Then, bam, 2019 brought us hooks, totally changing how we write components. 2022 gave us concurrency, making apps feel so much more responsive. And now, here in 2026, we are in a completely new era, one that's defined by the React compiler and server components. All right, let's get into our next section, where we are going to tackle one of the biggest, most historical pain points for pretty much any React developer: manual performance optimization. For what felt like an eternity, writing performant React meant just littering our code with hooks like useMemo and useCallback. It was so tedious, it was super error-prone, and it just added this huge mental overhead. Honestly, we were spending more time on what I call performance plumbing than on actually building cool features. Now, the first big simplification came with hooks back in 2019. This was a massive leap forward. It cleaned up all that verbose boilerplate we had with class components and made our code so much more readable. And now, check this out. This is the next giant leap. On the left, you see a component that's just cluttered with all those manual optimization hooks. But on the right, it's clean. It's simple. Why? Because the new React compiler handles all of that stuff for us automatically. This magic is all thanks to the React compiler. It's a tool that runs when you build your app, and it automatically optimizes all the rendering. It totally removes the need for manual memoization, that process of caching results to avoid recalculating stuff, so you get high-performance apps by default without having to babysit re-renders anymore. Okay, next up, let's talk about another huge shift: where our components actually run. The old model of fetching data on the client side created these awful performance bottlenecks called network waterfalls, where basically every piece of data has to wait for the one before it to finish loading, just slow. The solution is React Server Components, or RSCs, and these are a total game changer. These components run only on the server. They can talk directly to your database, your backend services, do all the heavy lifting right there, and then send just the final result, the pre-rendered HTML and very little JavaScript, down to the user's browser. This just completely flips the data flow on its head. The component runs on the server, it fetches its own data right there, and then it sends this nearly complete little package down to the browser. Boom! No more client-side waterfalls, a drastic reduction in the code you ship, and way, way faster initial load times. So with all these amazing new features like the compiler and server components, well, setting up a new React project from scratch has become incredibly complex. And this complexity has led to the rise of meta frameworks becoming the absolute default starting points. Today's landscape is really dominated by a few key players. You've got Next.js, which is the batteries-included giant. Then there's Remix, which is all about web standards and server-side rendering first. TanStack Start is for folks who want maximum type safety. And Astro is a speed demon for content-heavy sites using something called island architecture to ship 0 JavaScript by default for static parts of the page. So the choice isn't just React anymore, it's which architecture is the right fit for your project. So once you've picked your framework, how do you actually fill it out? Let's zoom out a bit and see how the entire developer workflow has been transformed by a new generation of tools. When we're talking about styling, oh boy, the debate is still raging. This quote right here perfectly captures the feeling so many developers have about utility-first CSS frameworks like Tailwind. Sure, they speed up development, but they can make your HTML look like, well, like a crime scene. But despite that debate, the 2026 toolbox has largely standardized. For the front end, it's Tailwind for styling and shadcn for UI components. For handling data and forms, it's Zod, React Hook Form, and this amazing tRPC and React Query combo that gives you end-to-end type safety. For state management, Zustand is pretty much the go-to, and it's all built with the incredibly fast Vite. But, the biggest change isn't a library at all. It's a new team member. Over 70% of developers are now using AI coding assistants in their daily workflow. And these are not just some fancy autocomplete tools anymore. AI assistants like GitHub Copilot and Cursor can understand your entire code base. They take care of all the grunt work, writing boilerplate, generating tests, even scaffolding out entire features, which frees you up to focus on the much more complex problems. So let's think about this. The compiler is automating performance, and AI is automating our boilerplate. It kind of begs the question, right? What does this all mean for the role of the developer? What's left for us to do? Well, essentially, our job is shifting from being the builder to being the architect. As all these tools get smarter at handling the how of implementation, our real value comes from deciding the what and the why. This means we're focusing on high-level architecture, user experience, and making those big strategic decisions. And that is the real question for developers in 2026. With all the tedious parts of our job being automated away, we have more time than ever to focus on what truly matters: building incredible, accessible, and meaningful experiences for our users. The tools have changed, and so has our role.